Hello, Ryan here, aka Mac, and welcome. We have the Persistent Universe's monthly report to get through, so let us get started. As always, a huge thank you to all of my patrons and channel members, in particular to my latest channel member, James Lampman. Thank you so much for the support, it is truly appreciated. And if you do enjoy my videos, please do consider subscribing and helping the channel to grow. So let's kick off with the animation team. They worked through issues with vendors, security, vending machines, and cowering and surrendering. They also progressed with general security and emote facial animations. The character art team continued to develop the Frontier outfits that will debut in Pyro, very excited to see them. And they also created Ninetales themed material variants for use later in the year, plus they worked on a subscriber flight suit for Q3. I wonder when it comes to these Ninetale themed material variants that potentially we may see them on foot and end up engaging with them on foot, as when they're in their ships, it doesn't really matter what they're wearing because we don't really see them. Anyway, the character art team also wrapped up work on the Salvage Specialist backpack and a selection of Pyro Gang outfits before moving on to Frontier outfits. And although we are yet to see these Frontier style outfits, I kind of feel like they might be the style for me. Now onto the ship art team. The UK-based team progressed with the Misk Hull A, finalising the interior lighting, completing level of details and working on the damage pass. The RSI Scorpius is close to final art complete. The wings were finished and added to the main body with working animations, which we saw them taking one wing to final art and then they were duplicating that wing for the rest of them, saving a bit of time there. The cockpit is currently in the polish phase with the final details being added, and the level of detail and damage passes are also underway. Both ships sound like they are going to be more than ready for 317. Now for the Banu Merchantman, it is now white box complete and due to start its grey box phase. The team are currently researching and developing materials to establish the ship's final look. This is moving a lot quicker than I expected it to, which is very interesting to see. I do feel like it might be in grey box for a little while though, as it's such an influential ship on the Banu race, taking what we have with the Defender, which has some very nice materials there, and then expanding that and scaling it to the size of the Banu Merchantman. Will probably take a bit of research, but as I say, they do seem to be progressing really well. Now, 2 unannounced vehicles are approaching grey box and final art respectively. The latter received work on the level of details and will receive final lighting, tints and a damage pass shortly. So one is approaching grey box, not sure what that is, but with this other one approaching final art phase, which is the same phase as the ships coming in 317, so this could be a straight to flyable ship for either 317 or Invictus Fleet Week. I do feel like it will be 317 rather than Invictus because that is still a couple of months away. Do let me know your thoughts as to what you think it might be. Now in the US, the ship team spent most of their time finishing out the Drake Vulture, creating a series of paints and cut-in patterns to allow for a wider range of customization options. And after addressing bugs, most of the team moved to finalizing level of details. Cannot wait for my Vulture. I do wonder what these customization options are. Are we going to see another level of customization beyond just skins? Maybe with some types of detailing? Not really sure what that means. Anyway, again, let me know what you think in the comments. The team also worked to create a quality bar for the Drake Vulture, an updated kit was created, and the cockpit and mess hall was brought to final art. They also made the decision to change the ship's layout after seeing that some areas were negatively affecting the player's experience, such as trapping players in the cockpit and manned turrets. Now this is another ship that I can't wait to see. 2 beautiful Drake ships on their way. I'm intrigued to see what the interior changes are. It doesn't sound like they're significant, just small changes here and there to allow for metrics, but we will see when the time comes. Now moving on to weapon art, the team continued to work on the fire extinguisher, which will be used of course for the fire hazard system. Hopefully we will see this either on an Inside Star Citizen updating us soon, or even in the PU soon, that would be nicer. They also completed a pass on all iron sights for FPS weapons to improve them from gameplay and design standpoints, which will help the players fire more accurately. And finally, they are currently wrapping up final art on the dedicated salvage tool, which I suspect they are hoping to get the dedicated salvage tool for whenever that salvage comes, hopefully still 318, which does sound like it could be the first dedicated tool that we see, because there is a dedicated mining tool, tractor beam, amongst many others I'm sure. But we are yet to see them in the verse, and it would be nice to finally put down the multi-tool. Now, for the engine team, the physics team continued to work on soft bodies. The system now allows visual skins to blend between skinned and skimmed positions, with the stepping rate of soft bodies increased to 120 Hz. Work also continued on general physics optimizations, while improvements to wheeled vehicles progressed. That will be a nice update. Hopefully it'll give us incremental speeds and speed adjustments like we have with ships. On the renderer, further progress was made to the Gen 12 transition. The rendering of brushes into G buffers is now enabled by default. Support for transient vertex and constant buffers was added, and viewport handling in graphics passes was improved. Tint support was added for massively instanced objects as well as render proxies. Also, further progress was made on porting HW skinning to Gen 12, and CGAs can now render into rendered textures, with RTTs no longer rendered within the G-buffer stage. It also says that the team worked on generalizing some of the Gen 12 concepts and changes the render pass API to be compatible with VK, KHR, dynamic rendering. No idea what that is. Now, in regards to atmosphere and cloud rendering, time was spent porting code over to Gen 12. Planet terrain height maps, which are used for various effects including large-scale planet terrain shadows, visual effects spawning and ground fog, already render using the new Gen 12 pass, which is exciting to see. This work will be completed shortly, after which passes for atmosphere, cloud, ground fog, and planetary terrain shadows will be converted. Not sure at which point these converted assets will start showing us much bigger performance gains, as we know it is rolling out over each patch, so 3.14 or 3.15 had the first round of conversions. I think 3.16 may have had something else, 3.17, 3.18, I don't know when it'll be complete, but we should be getting them with each patch. Of course, it all needs converting regardless, so great to see the progress is still happening. Now, with the introduction of the entity-centric component updates last month, time was spent further revising and improving related systems, such as the Entity Component Update Scheduler Inspector. Contention in zone host updates was improved, and update calls of various systems were shuffled around to reduce or even prevent stalls, which will be very nice. Stalls are obviously never fun in any game. Further optimizations include the deactivation of thread safety around function static variables on Linux DGS builds, matching the behavior of the Windows game client, with the team saying we'll be monitoring the gains once live in the PU and are confident they will help server performance. Additional improvements were made to the profiling tools and their integration into the engine, along with collated telemetry visualization. And finally, they are running include what you see passes to further reduce header dependencies and improve compilation times. A lot of words that I don't really understand what it all kind of means, but of course optimizations and improvements are an ongoing thing, and hopefully we will continue to see improvements in the verse as they get more of this implemented. For the character and weapon art features team, they continued to develop the Salvage gameplay, with the team saying the use of damage mapping is showing a lot of promise. However, there is still work to be done to reach the level of fidelity and persistence that they are looking for visually. The actual gameplay is progressing well too. Really hope that they can get the tech side of things working in time for 3.18. They are making huge progress with Salvage, which we will hear about from many of the teams in this report. And thankfully they do still have a bit of time before 3.18 comes, so my fingers are crossed that this fidelity level and persistence that they are looking for visually can be achieved. Now, currently the multi-tool with the Salvage attachment is used to salvage material from physical parts with damage maps and then reapply that same material to repair them. Work also began on a dedicated salvage and repair tool that will offer better stats compared to the multi-tool. And as we have just heard, work is already wrapping up on final art for this dedicated tool, so it sounds like the dedicated tool will be both able to repair and salvage, which could be one of the benefits of using it over the multi-tool perhaps. Likely with the multi-tool we'll need to swap the salvage attachment to the repaired attachment, but I would personally prefer to maybe need a dedicated repair tool rather than a tool that can do both. I haven't quite decided what I prefer there. Do let me know what you guys think. A single tool that can repair and a single tool that can salvage, or are you quite content with having a tool that can do both? Let me know. I'm still undecided on that. Now on the technical side, the team is looking to improve movement synchronization when viewing other players. The priority, they say, is always to tackle complete desync bugs where a player doesn't appear at all in the correct place, and this work involves improving how other players appear on a client screen. The team are aiming to achieve improved fidelity without increasing latency, and last month saw locally simulated characters reliably playing locomotion stop animations. So great to hear that they are really focused on fixing the desync issues, as it is one of the more severe issues with the PU right now. Now, moving on to gameplay features, they continued their polishing work and integration tasks for refueling. Development also continued on the life support system and engineering gameplay, and finally the team also took over vehicle functionalities for the salvage mechanic. So many awesome systems are now in the works. Refueling, which we know we're getting for 317, hopefully salvaging for 318, which is hand salvaging, repair, and ship salvaging with the Drake Vulture, but it's also exciting hearing that engineering and life support systems are underway. All of these systems are systems that I've been extremely excited for a long time now, and I can't wait to see what it involves. Now next we have the vehicle features team, who are focused on technical initiatives for future releases throughout February. This included the transit system, which required a rework to function under server meshing. Improvements were also made to restricted areas, which involved reworking tools for the level designers to create restricted areas faster and easier, and this will result in functional changes for the players at some point. And finally, minor improvements and updates were made to features relating to upcoming ships. Oh, I wish they would tell us more. For the graphics team, they continued their push on the Gen 12 renderer as well, with a large portion of the scene rendering enabled in the main branch. And while this doesn't have all the optimizations yet, it is a crucial first step in seeing significant performance improvements. They're currently awaiting engine optimizations on the main thread so that they can get the most from Gen 12 improvements as well. For both the graphics and visual effects programming teams, focus was on improving the damage map system for salvage and repair mechanics. These changes, they say, are extensive and require emulating the damage map system on the CPU, as the server doesn't have a GPU. They added various acceleration structures to keep things performant and compress the data so that it can be efficiently transferred over the network. I am expecting to see more on salvaging and these damage maps on an Inside Star Citizen one of these days, so fingers crossed we're not waiting too long. The team also continued making the shader authoring process more modular, developing the fire hazard system and improving the auto test system to ensure that they don't introduce instability to the rest of the development team. I really hope they show us fire soon. I've been wanting to see an update on fire or the fire hazard system for a while now. It has been quite a few months. It was definitely last year that we last saw the updates to the fire hazard system, and the work from the graphics and visual effects team does finish this month for the fire hazard system, as it shows it on the progress tracker. Now I know it's been extended a couple of times, but I'm really interested to see just how this works, how fires can be started, how we tackle them with different systems, like using the fire hydrant and other ship systems like venting the oxygen, turning off life support and so on. Now the lighting team began work on a major event planned for later in the year, progressing with various minor areas before the key locations are available for a full pass. CIG are seriously teasing us with this stuff. Progress was also made on Pyro's space stations, with the team focusing on look dev work towards the colder and less hospitable corners of these locations. Man, it is going to be mind-blowing travelling through to Pyro for the first time. Now on to locations. The Montreal-based team completed their work on the new medical locations, with Lorville's Hospital, the Maria Pure of Heart, and Space Clinic variations now ready for release. Both of these are 317 releases. Levski's Hospital, which is found in the Nyx system, which we won't likely get until after Pyro anyway, is considered complete for the time being, though the team will return for a final polish and debug pass closer to its release. Now after this, they say the team moved on to the derelict settlements, completing the white box stage for the first proof of concept locations based around a crashed reclaimer. They say the first settlement is a way to build and validate a full production pipeline to eventually produce derelict settlements on a larger scale. Whew, this is likely the derelict reclaimer that we saw in Inside Star Citizen, and it looked very impressive. It's also incredible to hear that they are creating a derelict settlement, not just a derelict ship, but an actual settlement where NPCs will live. And just like we saw with the rivers and such, it sounds like they're establishing the process of doing this with one location first, and then that will allow them to scale it up more in the future with what they learn and what they develop. Now, sticking with derelict settlements, the art team is creating a visual target. The design team began learning the mission system and subsumption, which is what drives the AI, to allow them to populate the locations with gameplay, and the tools team is building a suite of procedural tools to improve productivity and quality. Again, getting these settlements not just in-game as locations, but populated with content using the first one as a template to help expand quicker in the future. Love the sound of this. More about this in a second. Artists also began looking at a potential crash site with the Mercury Star Runner and Origin 600, so expanding the types of derelict spaceships that we have to those two ships. Now, finally, a rework of Lorville's cityscape kicked off. The objective, they say, is to first upgrade the visual quality of the cityscape and then also pave the way for larger buildings with interiors. The current scale of the buildings, they say, prevents building interiors with gameplay inside them, so by scaling up, the team will be able to add interiors as needed. Now, it will be so nice to have more gameplay and content around these main landing zones. Things like FPS missions, engineering and repair missions, or maybe investigation missions, all around the main landing zones, which is why we are seeing more landing zones getting their buildings fleshed out. Eventually, I'm sure most of the buildings around these landing zones will have interiors or places to go, points of interest. Right now, there is barely anything in these huge cities. But as CIG has mentioned in the past, there should be enough content in one location that the players don't feel the need to want to constantly fly all over the place and jump to new systems, new planets, new locations. There should be enough to keep people entertained in one location for a long period of time. Now, for the Sandbox 1 team, they moved the new outposts down the pipeline and began playtesting with the wider team. Outposts are being placed on Pyro 3, which we saw during CitizenCon, and this is for the initial testing and layouts. Makeup and composition progressed, with design iterating on feedback to solidify the gameplay experience, with the team saying there is still a way to go to get a polished experience, but it's great to be able to play this as a more complete product than we have in the past. The team also began to add a wider variety of static modules to mix up the sub-themes scattered around the outskirts of the outposts. I think it was said during the CitizenCon demo that the aim is to populate Pyro 3, or maybe just the Pyro system, with up to 50 of these outposts of varying types, like farmsteads, homesteads, traders, gangs, derelicts and so forth. Whether this is still the plan though, we will have to wait and see. Elsewhere, art began early white box on derelict outpost variations, which we also saw on a recent Inside Star Citizen, and they do look incredible. The team want to give a feeling of age and history, so they are creating several smaller exploration-driven spaces alongside the main occupied buildings. So they are really expanding the points of interest massively now. We have had derelict spaceships of varying types for a while. It looks like they're expanding on those different types of ships and improving them as they go, like we saw with the Caterpillars. Derelict ship settlements that are not just a location, but they will have mission content. They will have maybe NPC mission givers. It would be cool to see very small, low-paying sort of missions where they request you to go and get, 5 pieces of Ratna dung from the local cave. They're too scared to go down there, blah, blah, blah. But also many outpost variations, as well as occupied and unoccupied derelict outposts in the works. Loads of stuff going on from the Montreal team. They are absolutely killing it. Now, further work was also done on Pyro's Skybox and Stanton's Lagrange points, and finally the team began pre-production on a wider variety of space debris and interesting space structures that will allow them to create more interesting exploration opportunities in space. So not just planet-side points of interest, but also space points of interest, which will be a lot of fun. Hopefully it'll involve a bit of exploration, like scanning and then finding these anomalies and then investigating them further for rewards or whatever. Now, moving on to narrative, they continued to capture dialogue for an upcoming dynamic event with multiple characters and several non-linear objectives. They say it's one of the more complicated event scripts to date and require close coordination to ensure that every possible gameplay trigger was accounted for. Not sure what this could be. I know during, I think it was CitizenCon when Tony Z updated us on the quantum system, there was like 3 other dynamic events in the list. I think one was like Pyromania, which is clearly waiting for Pyro, I would assume. Another one was called Infiltrator, not sure what that was. And then one more that I can't remember. It sounds like it could be one of these ones. The narrative team also supported design on various upcoming features like refueling. Additionally, new documentation was created for branding and environmental storytelling throughout the universe, including the Pyro system. And another focus was on proposing new mission character archetypes with the hopes of populating locations with new ways to interact with NPCs to find missions. So like I said earlier, this will be really great for having NPCs giving various low-key missions, like going to grab a plant, or I've heard there's loads of treasure at this location, maybe you could go and investigate. Those types of everyday missions that we see in the Elder Scrolls series, for example, like side quests. I feel like that will be a great kind of easy addition for the PU. I say easy, it's probably not easy at all, but just simple missions from visiting places and making a little extra cash on the side with something a bit more different. The props team spent the month supporting Pyro's space stations and completed props for events coming later in the year. For the Systemic Services and Tools team, they continued to work on various internal tools, wrapping up the development of automation and scheduling for dynamic events, which will be used when manual activation isn't appropriate. Service-wise, they expanded on the NPC tracker service to include various in-game events and make them available for future use. Support for the selling feature continued, with the team working closely with the gameplay teams on the final elements, edge cases, and general polish. Now, for the Montreal Tools team, they moved almost entirely onto the mighty bridge tech, which will speed up the development of the procedural location tool. They also supported the locations team with the derelict settlements, iterating on tools to help with asset scattering. Hopefully in a sprint report we actually get to see this settlement. The concept art for it looked phenomenal. The art team will use this tool to quickly scatter assets like ship debris and visual effects to create interesting looking locations. Also, the tool will be used in the production of other locations like derelict outposts. Now, for the Turbulent Game Services team, they split their time between anti-cheat, login flow, and reputation system initiatives. For the anti-cheat system, they supported the new SDK to solve issues with Linux and Windows users using special characters. The anti-cheat logs have also been closely monitored, and several hotfixes have been made in prep for infraction enforcement. The login and document services were finalized for the overall login flow, and these services constitute around a third of the overall effort needed for this project that aims to improve performance and fits into the wider global server meshing project. Performance improvements were also made to the reputation system, and the team also took the opportunity to shift the stack to follow changes in the stack made for server meshing. Not sure what the stack is or how it relates to server meshing, but for some reason it's making me feel very hungry. The Live Tools team transitioned one of the key dev tools to new hosting technology, delivering minor feature improvements along the way. The Hex project, which is the Game Master tool, made significant progress throughout the month, shifting the Network Operations Center to its new UI and enabling all of the tools in Hex to leverage the new UI structure. Now, for the Turbulent Web Platform team, they pushed further with the backlog and tech debt cleanup in prep for the year ahead. They also worked to resolve current issues as well as expand the library to evolve components and give a more structured design system. And finally, they prepped for upcoming in-game events, adding new features to better showcase vehicles, probably for Invictus Fleet Week, I would say. Now, for the UI team, they progressed with the visuals and underlying features of the new star map. Cannot come soon enough. This included creating an in-editor concept and implementing the controls and marker icon transitions. UI also began converting the visor and lens to building blocks, with many of the actor widgets being completed. Additional polish on the medical screens was undertaken, and the UI feature team made the final polish and bug fixing passes on refueling. Not too long until 3.17 starts rolling out, cannot wait. Now for the vehicle tech team, they began the month fixing bugs for an upcoming release, including many issues involving network sync, vehicle damage, doors and elevators, and item port validation. I really hope they can make some improvements for the network sync. Fingers are firmly crossed there. Improved tools are being made to make implementing and fixing issues with doors and elevators easier, both within vehicles and space stations, and when complete, it will help the developer fix issues without having to know the technical properties of these highly logic-driven items. Very glad to hear that the doors and elevators are getting love. Many for a while now on both vehicles and space stations have been a problem, and I'm sure that anyone who has visited Grimhex recently has become stuck there. So any fixes there, or any resolving of those issues will be a big win for criminals, definitely. Anyway, finally we have visual effects. They continued their work on the salvaging effects, including using particle emitter strength curves to show when there is nothing left to salvage in a chosen area. So aside from the obvious gaping hole in the hull, the ember and particulate matter will stop spawning from the impact area, and the artists are collaborating with the weapons feature team to create the best possible player experience when this feature goes live. I am getting so much more excited to see this come to life the more that I read about it. I presume we will begin seeing this on Inside Star Citizen at some point, but hearing about all the work going on for Salvage has really got me frothing at the mouth. Now, pre-production was completed and production began on visual effects for the MISC Hull A. An effects pass was done on the Maria Pure of Hearts Hospital in Lawville, including a purification scanner that sterilizes the player when passing through the entrance. And finally, effects support was given to a new destructible prop as well. So there you have it, the monstrous monthly report for February. That is an insane amount of information and so much work getting done. Hearing about Salvage, all of these points of interest from the Montreal team, planetside and in space as well, Pyro and so much more, they are making huge progress with a lot of areas of the game. But with that said, that is the end of this video. Thank you so much for making it through, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please do consider subscribing and helping the channel to grow. Also, come and hang out over at twitch.tv/supermacbrother. You are all more than welcome. Hit the thumbs up if you don't mind. It does do the channel a big favor, and tick that notification bell if you would like to be notified when my videos go live. Again, huge thank you to my patrons and channel members. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.